Life after prison in the hustle. My name is Cam, and we are here today with a special guest. This is Sabrina. She also happens to be my mother. We're going to talk a little bit about her drug recovery, her battles fighting addiction, us doing the unthinkable, bringing drugs into a prison facility, getting caught, and then her road to recovery, and therefore after. Mom, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Sabrina. I've been clean a little over 8 years now. He wanted me to go into my childhood. I grew up with a single mother. My dad and her divorced when I was like 4 or something. My dad was a drug addict and an alcoholic. Um, let's see. Growing up, he had one leg, but eventually they took both of his legs due to a disease that he had, hardening of the arteries. But I always knew him as an alcoholic and a drug addict. And I always swore to myself that wasn't going to be me. I was going to do something different. My mom, she was a drinker, but she was a hard worker. She always had a job. She always took care of me and my sisters. I'm the youngest of three. I had two older sisters. My oldest sister lived with me, all my childhood. My middle sister, she decided to go live with my dad when she was 11. So she really didn't like grow up with us all the time. Um, I was totally against drugs. I mean, of course, as a teenager, you know how you dibble and dabble in high school, stuff like that. But I swore I was never going to be like my dad. And then, went on. I went to school. I went to college. I started off at Columbus State for mental health, chemical dependency, and did that. And then I ended up transferring to Capital and got a bachelor's degree of psychology and sociology with a minor in criminology. I was on my way. Well, while I was going through school, I got hurt. I was working at a warehouse job, and I had got hurt on a forklift and went to the doctors, and they gave me pain pills. At the time, it was Vicodin. And I swore, this ain't going to affect me. I'm going to take it just for the pain and be done. Well, that didn't happen. That just, continued, and I had to take more and more to get rid of the pain. And then a few years went by. I was still on the pain pills. And then I got my dream job. I was working for the county. I was working at child support. I had graduated. I had three children at the time, three little children. Matter of fact, I gave birth to my youngest daughter 2 days after I graduated with my bachelor's. So that's how close that was. Um, I got sick and I kept having these really bad headaches and my face was hurting. And it got to the point where I couldn't eat or drink anything. Everything I ate or drank would like come out my nose. And I kept telling the doctor, something's wrong, something is wrong. And he kept saying, oh no, it's just a sinus infection, just a sinus infection. That went on for over a year. Well, it was, little did I know it was doing a lot of damage during that time. Well, I ended up going to the hospital for a broken toe, of all things. And the doctor come in, and you know how they always look in your mouth and all that, when they're doing the exam. He asked me when I had my uvula removed, and I was like, my what? I didn't even know what a uvula was. Was that flap of skin in the back of your throat? And I told him, I said, I didn't have it removed. And he was like, He's like, the only time I've ever seen it just disappear like that is through throat cancer. So that, of course, had me freaked out. So he immediately sent me to see an ear, nose, and throat doctor. Well, I went and seen him, and 4 biopsies later, I was diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disorder called Wagner's. It's now called GPS, but it was called Wagner's granulomatosis.
Try saying that 3 times fast.
Yeah, Wagner's granulomatosis. So, anyways, the day the doctors all came in, I was in the hospital. My husband was there with me. They told me that none of the doctors who were in my room, and there was a lot of them, had ever treated anybody with my disease. And they said it was terminal. Well, my husband, being who he was, said, well, what's that mean? How long she got? He's to the point, blunt. And they said there was no way to tell, that everybody was different by how they reacted. So here I am thinking, I got 3 little kids. I'm going to die, and that freaks you out within itself.
And what year was this?
This was in 2000.
And it's 2026 now, you guys. So
Yeah,
that says
and I'm
something.
still here. So yeah, so when somebody tells you that you're gonna die, you either get busy living or you get busy dying. Well, I got busy dying, or trying to. They plowed me with so many pain pills. The doctor who that I was seeing for my regular pain pills felt so bad because he had missed it. He basically just was giving me everything and anything. And that's when they
Did you
introduced
ask
me.
for him to prescribe you a certain type of pill?
No, I did not. I just told him I was in a lot of pain. So that was the first time he had given me Oxycontin. And that is at the height of when they were just giving everybody the high doses of Oxycontin. I was getting 330 Oxycontin 80s a month, in addition to like 270 Percocets and Xanax. I mean, just everything you could think of. So needless to say, I was pretty much a zombie. And I had already checked out. I thought I was going to die. So I was obviously worried about my children too, but I was oblivious. I sunk into a deep depression and, was on the pills. Now that the Oxycontin, I never really did those because those were real strong. And I knew at the time those were money makers. So that's how we made our money. And I stuck with taking the Percocet and everything else that they had given me. And my husband, he was right there with me. He wasn't in any pain, but he sure took half of my stuff every month.
So let's just clarify this real quick. She was getting 330 Oxy 80s a month, equivalent to one Oxy 80 is probably 3 Percocet 30s, if that gives you guys any type of reference. On top of getting 120 Perc 30s, Xanax, that's a lot of narcotics and drugs for two people. And like she just said, my father was taking half of her script and doing half of her script. So you can just imagine the mind state they was in within them 30 days of getting that amount of perks and oxys. And we can imagine that growing up, kids being, clueless on the environment, but also recognizing that something's not right.
Yes. I mean, it was so bad that I walked into Target Pharmacy one time to pick up my script, and the pharmacist come over and said, "How are you upright and walking?" Because he thought I was taking all the medication that I was prescribed.
And then do you remember how much they were having you take in one day? Like, the prescription said you're supposed to take this amount this day.
I think it was five Oxycontin 80s in the morning, and had to have been 4 at night, 4 at night, and then taking 2 Percocets every 4 hours for breakthrough pain.
So we're looking at 9 Oxy 80s a day plus, let's just say, 10 or 15 Perc 30s on top of that. So the pharmacist was right. How was she literally walking into the store at that point if she's taking that amount of drugs?
I believe still to this day that if I would have took all the pills the doctor prescribed me, it would have killed me. There's no doubt in my mind. It would have killed me. So we went on that way for, a long time. I mean, when it was good, it was good. We had money. We would splurge on the kids. And I mean, it's not the way I wanted to show my love, but at the time it was the only way I was capable of, was to buy them, everything they wanted or, whatever. I mean, at the time we were living in a nice house. So years went on that way. And then, of course, I got cut off. And when you get cut off of that much medication and you're that deep into it, you're going to look for something else.
A different alternative.
Yes. And that is when we turned to heroin. It was cheaper, easy to get at the time. And that's, in the beginning, it was a lot cheaper, but trust me, it does not stay cheaper at all.
Because obviously you build a tolerance up. At first it might be more potent and cheaper, but the more you do, the higher tolerance gets, the more money you're spending a day, to the point where it puts you in the same predicament you were in with the perks. It's not getting you as high as you want, so you just keep spending and spending and spending until you're overboard.
Yes, definitely. Well, things were, bad at this time. Now we weren't living in a nice house anymore. I had my 2 teenagers living in a 1-bedroom apartment with us. And so you can only imagine how cramped that was and how bad it was for them. Of course, when you're selling drugs, you deal with that type of people. So I had those people coming around my kids all the time. We were robbed a couple times at gunpoint.
Quite a few times.
Yeah, I remember one time they came in and Cameron laid across his sister, protected her, and then grabbed the dog because they was going to shoot our dog.
I remember that.
Yeah, we had a pit bull named Sissy. Had her since she was very little, and she was the most loyal dog, best dog ever. She has since passed away a couple years ago, but she was old. But yeah, I mean, Sissy knew they weren't supposed to be here, and they were going to shoot her. But Cameron saved her as well. Well, they come into the bedroom where me and my husband was. I gave them what they wanted, and then they left. But that wasn't the only time we were robbed at gunpoint. I mean, we were robbed quite a few times. As far as my disease went, I just lived every day. I don't know why, I was still here. Every day I woke up, I was surprised, I guess.
Right, because, back in 2003, they gave you 6 months to a year to live. 10 years down the line, do you think the doctors were wrong? Do you just don't think they knew enough about your cancer to really give you a reasonable response?
I'm not sure. I mean, today I'm under care. I'm under care of a legitimate rheumatologist. I have infusions every 6 months. I mean, I was probably still in a lot of pain and just didn't know it because I didn't feel it because I wasn't feeling anything at the time. Let's see. When my youngest daughter, she moved out when she was 17. She had enough. She was done. I think Cameron was already out on his own by then.
Yeah, I was.
And then when Cameron went to prison, that was a shocker. Cameron's my only son. I have 2 older daughters. That broke my heart. I mean, I would do anything for any one of my kids and my grandkids. But
so when you mean a shocker, I mean, people that knew me growing up knew I was headed down the wrong road. I'd been selling weed for a while. I was shot when I was 17, so I always tried to carry a gun. More or less, I was buying your guys' perks off you, like something called prepay, where I'd give you guys the money to fuel your addiction throughout the month. Then I'd get, a bulk amount of perks, and this is at 16, 17 years old. And that's a lot of money to a 16, 17-year-old. And like she said, by this time, I'm living with 4 other individuals, renting out a room. So it's basically like a party house in a sense. Throughout the years, I had my own addiction. Fought my own demons. Like I said, I was shot when I was 17. At that time, I was prescribed Percocets. Now, I had dibbled and dabbled once in a while in like Xanax and perks, but never like to that extent. I think that was my turning point when it comes to the hard drugs is when I was prescribed the Percocets. By that time, I just started basically selling perks to supply my habit. Eventually, it just got so expensive to where, like she said, heroin's a lot cheaper. I was already selling heroin through their contacts, because like she said, you're in that type of environment, you're surrounded by those people or those type of people in that environment. So I knew a lot of people. She knew a lot of people. My dad knew a lot of people. So I basically just piggybacked on their clientele and their friends and just started selling heroin to support my Percocet habit. But it got to the point where, perks was either being cut with all a bunch of nasty type of stuff. Now, fentanyl wasn't really that big at that time just yet, but they were cutting them with Xanax, and anybody that knows Percocet and Xanax is a deadly mixture. So it came to a point where Percocets were going for like $35, and to me, I got to buy 3 or 4 of them a day just to, get by, I guess, not even to get high at that point. So I basically did the one rule you're not supposed to do when you're a drug dealer, and I got high on my own supply, and it was pretty much downhill from there. I caught case after case. That would be more in detail in a different video. Like she said, it really was a shocker when I went to prison, but not really to the people that were close to me. I mean, we kind of knew after a few years of me fighting certain cases and getting in trouble, bonding out multiple times, that I was eventually going to go to prison. Thankfully, I only got sentenced to 4 years for all the stuff that I was looking at. It was 2 mandatory, and it broke her heart. It broke my dad's heart, but he really didn't he wasn't the type of man to show that type of emotion.
Yeah, that's a fact. we had been married for years. I mean, years and years.
On and off. You've been divorced 3 times, married 4
I
times.
actually married him 3 times, divorced him twice. What can I say? I was glutton for punishment. Um, but yeah, we had been together through thick and thin. I mean, there was even a time that I tried to quit on my own and went to Hawaii for 9 months.
I remember that.
My oldest daughter married a military man, and they lived out there on a military base. And I went out there to try to get my stuff together, and everything was good while I was there. Well, I missed home. I missed my other kids. I had never been away from them for that long. And it's not like you can just, get in the car and drive to see them. So I came back. And when I came back, I went right back into it. Went right back to Mike and went right back into it.
Yeah, because unfortunately, like, she can take herself out of the situation and get clean. My father had no motivation to get clean at that point. So basically, when she came back from Hawaii, it just basically snapped right back to where she was a year later. You know what I mean? I'm a strong believer in it's people, places, and things. In order to beat this addiction, to beat these demons, you have to cut off anybody and everything that is associated with that type of environment or that type of situation. So came back from Hawaii, was doing really good in Hawaii. But once she got back around them people and that environment, it's like she never left.
Yeah. So then Cameron goes to prison. And, I try to go see him, when I can. I could never get his dad to go because his dad had a warrant for his arrest. I think it was some little traffic warrant or something.
But I think, didn't you have a warrant at the time?
Did.
Maybe not at first when you first started coming to see me.
I did. It was the same. It was just a little traffic warrant.
Yeah.
But
which was really surprising.
Mine wasn't a traffic warrant. Mine was drug paraphernalia out of Franklin County.
Right, which was really surprising that the prison let you come in there with a warrant. Because I felt like the first time you was going to come see me, they was going to bag and tag you.
You would have thought, but they never did.
So
I took the chance every time I went.
Right. So she's coming back and forth to see me. It was probably, and now at this time, I'm still recovering from being a drug addict. I'm still sick. I've only been in there. I think the first time she came to see me was in CRC. Did you come to CRC to see me? No, it was Lancaster.
Mm-hmm.
So I had another individual coming to see me in CRC, and I had that person bringing me drugs in through a visitation. It was only twice, but it basically got me to where I needed to be as far as my mind was clear, at least what I thought was clear at the time. Now, mind you, I'm still a drug addict. I'm still looking for that fix. By the time I got to Lancaster, I was already switched from heroin to Suboxone. Anybody that knows, in prison, Suboxone is a big thing. Not only is it an expensive thing, but once your system cleaned out of heroin, you actually get high from Suboxone. So with that mind mentality of still being a drug dealer, still being an addict, I was looking for my own way to get high, make some money. That way I didn't have to rely on anybody else. At least that's my mind frame. I am, a mama's boy. Came up with the bright idea, hey, let's see if my mom will bring in some drugs. And let's tell them how that conversation went.
When he first brought it up, I remember telling him when we knew he was going to go to prison, just don't ever ask me to bring anything in, because I will not. Because I remember when my dad was in prison, me growing up, he always had my stepmom do it. And I was scared to death of prison. Had never been to prison, as an inmate. And he just... At one of my visits, he asked me. Well, I mean, my mind was telling me, no, you're his mother. Tell him no. But my heart was telling me, I got to help him. He needs this. I got to help him. And a little part of my criminal brain was saying, that's extra money for drugs. So eventually I agreed.
And not only did I use that to my advantage, her being a drug addict, but I also played on her feelings for me as a mother. Me being her only son, her baby boy. I knew, how to push certain buttons to tick people off. So how to push certain buttons on their heartstring, okay? So I knew what to say and how to say it in order to get my way. I mean, I've been doing it for years. It wasn't too hard. And at that time, I wasn't thinking about her safety, her freedom, my safety. I was just thinking drugs, drugs, drugs. and money, because at that time, I believe the strips, one Suboxone strip at Lancaster were going for $400 a piece. Now, just imagine, being in prison for just $400 alone is a lot of money in prison. But I'm getting, 40, 50 strips. You guys can do the math. So we did that. I don't want to get too much into that because obviously, we don't want to incriminate ourselves, and we're not going to explain how we did it. But we are going to say, that it's not worth it. Maybe in the moment it's worth it. The money was decent when it was there, but me being in prison, it brought on a lot of problems that people don't talk about. When you're getting a bag in prison, you always got to look over your shoulder. You got to watch who's watching you. You got to watch out for the COs. You got to watch out for the inmates. And you got to watch out for your associates, the people you fuck with on a day-to-day basis that might be feeling some type of way that you're not, getting them high every day. That now they know you got the bag, but you're not giving them a strip a day. Now, who in their right mind is going to give somebody $400 a day, when you got 15, 16 homies on the compound? So that was one of the downfalls is I let too many people know what was going on, I believe. I put not only my freedom in jeopardy, but I put my mother's freedom in jeopardy. I still remember today of the moment I walked into the visiting room, the day we got caught, I instantly knew something was wrong. Now, I'm going to explain how the process is of getting to the visiting room at the inmate side. She's going to, explain the process of getting in there as the visitor side. So when you go to a visitation in prison, they make you strip down completely butt naked, squat and cough. And then usually when you go into the visiting room, your family member or whoever is coming to see you is already seated at the table. So when I walked into that visiting room that day, she was nowhere to be found. That instantly was a red flag to me. Instantly knew something was wrong. The CO told me to come here. I walked over there. He told me to sit down at desk number 2, which was right up against the wall by the front door where they come in. That was red flag number 2. Thinking of a way how to get out of here, how to get out of a lockdown facility. I'm in prison. So I go up to the CO's desk. I refuse the visit. He's like, you can't refuse the visit. You're already in here. I was like, well, I don't want the visit. He's like, Mr. Clifton, sit down. She'll be out here in a minute. So right there was flag number 3. How'd he know, that it was a woman, it was a she, not knowing, that they got a list in front of him at the time. But this is how my mind's working. So I'm sitting there at desk number 2, waiting for her to walk in, knowing she's never going to come. My leg gets to twitching. I'm shaking. I'm starting to sweat. They were probably watching the security cameras and knew I was on some bullshit because of the sweat that was pouring off me. About 10 minutes go by, and then finally the door pops, and 2 plainclothes detectives walk in, and they ask me my name. I tell them my name. They tell me to stand up. They turn me around. They cuff me up. The investigator was also with them. They handed me over to the investigator. He walked me through the visiting room to the prison yard and walked me to his office. By that time, a million things is running through my mind. Is my mom okay? Did they catch her? How'd they know? What does this mean for me? Because that's still the selfishness that I was still feeling at the time. It's more about me. Now, yes, once I got into the investigator's office, I started trying to figure out a way how to get her out of trouble. I knew I was cooked at that point. I knew they got me. The investigator already said that they got her with a balloon full of drugs. He wouldn't tell me what type of drugs it was, but I knew. So I instantly started coming up with a story that me and her kind of touched based on, here to here when we was going through the visits of what I would say if we ever got caught. So at first I told him that I wrote her a letter saying that my life was in danger, that if we didn't do this, yada, yada, yada. The second story I could have told him was, I threatened to harm myself or kill myself unless she did that, which, being a mother, you're not going to not do what your son's asking if he's talking about killing himself. But at that time, like I said, nothing I said would have mattered. She was already in handcuffs. She was already going to jail. And, that was pretty much it. I went to the hole, ended up getting my level reviewed and raised. It was probably a good, 2 months before I finally got to talk to you? 2 months before I finally got to talk to her once I was in a new prison and she finally got out of jail. And it was pretty much, at that point, it is what it is. Now looking back on the situation, you know, a lot of people look down on me and criticize me because I used my mom to my advantage to bring drugs into a facility. But I stand by this comment that I've made multiple times in the past. I wouldn't change it for the world. And the reason I wouldn't change it is because, Mom, how many years do you have sober today?
Over 8 years.
She has over 8 years sober today. She works a very good county job helping people as a peer supporter. And I honestly don't believe none of that would have happened if we wouldn't have made those bad decisions in that time. So yes, I used my mom to bring drugs into the facility. Yes, we went to jail. Yes, I got my level reviewed. And I got an extra year on top of the 4 years that I was originally sentenced to. But I would not take it back today. I would do that year gladly if that meant my mom would be almost 9 years sober, working a county job, thriving in life, helping women that was once in her situation. Just to let you guys know.
Now, the day we got caught, my take on it. I go in like a normal visiting day, you know, I go through the little metal detector, empty my pockets and everything. Everything was fine. They walked me through the first door and I walk over to the visiting room door and I reached out for the handle and as soon as my hand hit it, I heard Miss Clifton and I knew. I knew without turning around. I knew. I turned around and there stood 2 state highway patrols. And they're like, you need to come with us. And I mean, I knew I was caught. And they walked me deep into this prison. I mean, we went nowhere close to any exits. We were going further down in the prison. And the only thing I kept saying is, where's my son? Is my son okay? Is my son okay? They wouldn't answer none of my questions. They kept telling me, wait till we get to where we were going. They take me into this little room and they kept asking me where my husband was. And I was like, well, he's not here. And they're like, well, he's supposed to be. And I'm like, well, he's not. And they're like, well, he's supposed to be. We've been listening to your phone conversations. And he was supposed to come that day and changed his mind at the last minute.
Thankfully.
Yes, because they did have 2 warrants laying on the desk, both of them ready to arrest both of us. So then the woman, Highway Patrol, said that she also knows that I have drugs on me. And she told me that she was going to search me, you know, strip search me. And I was like, well, if I can reach in my pocket, I'll give them to you.
Right, because I want to touch base on that. For people that are watching this, there was no suppository of the drugs. It didn't go that far. Like I said, I don't want to touch base on how we did it, but I will describe of what it was. It was literally a balloon wrapped full of Suboxones, and she would just keep it in her pocket of her coat. It was pretty much an easy transition. I just want to touch base and let people know that there was no other nasty shit going on. It was never inside of her body.
No.
If that's what you guys were sitting there thinking.
No. So anyway, she told me, yeah, I could reach in my pocket. So I did. I reached in my pocket, pulled the balloon out, and laid it on the desk. I mean, I knew I was caught, and she was going to search me anyway. So I figured I'd try to help myself out a little bit and cooperate.
Try to earn some brownie points.
So then I asked once again, where's my son? Where's Cameron? And they told me that he was already in the hole. And I was devastated. I just like fell back in my chair. And I mean, I was upset. I was distraught. I mean, I'm still his mom. And of course, you know, like Cameron said, you know, we had talked about it before. So I immediately start saying, you know, that I got a phone call from somebody who had threatened Cameron and that, you know, I was told to do this. And that if I didn't, they was going to hurt him. They weren't buying it at all. They didn't even write it down.
I mean, they couldn't buy it because, I mean, we had no names to give them. We had no organizations to give them. I mean, At that time, you know, they wanted names, numbers, and something we can't provide you guys. You know, we didn't. It was all fake.
Right.
Let me ask you this, though. Like, when they told you I was in the hole and you said you were devastated, was it more devastation because of me, or was it devastated because you feel like you failed at me because I'm your son and I expected, you know, this to happen? Or was it just like all around devastation and, you know, disappointment in yourself as far as how did I let myself get to this point?
All of that. I mean, I was devastated for Cameron because I knew he was going to get more time, you know, and I didn't want that. I was devastated for myself because, like he said, I thought to myself, you know, how'd I get here? Why did I let this happen? I'm the mother. I should have said no. You know, I knew better. I did. I knew better. And I still did it. So, anyways, they arrested me, you know, put me in cuffs and took me out to the car that I had came in. It was a